I am Ramona, and welcome to Ramona Interviews. And with me in the chair today is Scott Schaeffer-Duffy. Now, he is a peace activist. He is also a member of the Catholic Worker Movement. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
We're here to talk about some interesting things. Basically, a trip that involves peace activism that you took in Afghanistan. And since the world is focused, hopefully for the best and positive and highest good in that area of the world right now, what can you tell us about your experience there in Afghanistan with your trip?
Well, as a member of the Catholic Worker Movement, we work for peace and justice, mostly here in the United States, but occasionally in places of conflict. And my wife and I and other members of our community have been to 18 different conflict zones at different points in another. In fact, my wife was in Afghanistan in 2002, shortly after the U.S. war began. And this was my first trip there. I was invited in March by the Voices for Creative Nonviolence, which is a group out of Chicago, who had made 3 exploratory trips, members of their group, to Afghanistan, and now wanted a larger delegation. They were hoping for an international delegation to go. And the main purpose of the trip was to inform us about what was happening there, and for us to offer support to indigenous peace activists in Afghanistan, 2 groups in particular, the Afghan Youth Peace Volunteers and a group called Open Society, which was a human rights organization that had formed in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, I think people are still feeling out what's the most helpful way to go.
Yeah.
And so there was some talk of having 1,000 or 100 peace activists. And some of us raised concerns the group should be small. And Afghanistan has particular security concerns. If internationals gather in any particular place in large numbers, they can draw the attention of suicide bombers.
That's true, yeah.
And it's not always distinguished, are you a humanitarian or so on. The Red Cross Center, 12 to 18 people killed recently in a Red Cross center. So they were, that was a concern too, and the organizers took that concern from me initially and located us in 3 different places in Kabul. So our footprint wouldn't be overwhelming in one particular place. Yeah. And some of us are hardline pacifists, and myself included, so we insisted wherever we stay, it had to have no armed guards, no blast walls, it had to be open to the general Afghan public. So we stayed in the most public of the 3 places. Of the 3 places. Right.
And are there levels of, because I have not heard that term before, this is a new kind of world for me to see the formalization of a process for peace. For 200 years, politically and also ideologically.
I knew what you meant.
We have had a building of our prosperity and our thinking in war, in the products of war, making war, manufacturing things for war, things like that. So in order to move through to a higher level, you need a kind of process of peace. And what that means and how to incorporate that. So here it is, you're talking about these groups that are all over the world that have been doing this 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years in one capacity or another. And are there, back to my question, are there lines? Now you said you are a strict peace person, so you will not have any security, you will not. What does that mean? And are there levels within that?
Sure, there are. And I mean, in terms of peacemaking, here in the United States, in the 18th century, Adin Ballou, one of the, really the founders of modern peacemaking here, in his writings were read by Tolstoy and by Gandhi and inspired them both. Their understanding was non-participation in violence. So draft resistance, refusal to pay military taxes, essentially people saying, I won't do violence myself. And that's, of course, a first step if you don't do it. But if other people are still doing it, it doesn't stop it.
Right. You live with an action.
So later on, Gandhi was more active in his nonviolence in terms of, I'm going to try to persuade other people through nonviolent civil disobedience and other types of campaigns. And he used a good term about nonviolence. It's an experiment in truth. And so every peace action that takes place, there's a planning, there's an action, and there's an evaluation. You look what was good, what was bad, what could be better. And you learn things, you know, and the peace movement is building and learning. It's peace building that's going on now. And each country has its different concerns, its different history, different geography, language, and you know, so different things may be effective in different countries. Women sometimes are extraordinarily effective in peacemaking situations because in some societies, sexism plays to their advantage. They won't be shot if women are in the forefront or so on. In some societies, the presence of women is not helpful. You know, some societies, religious expression is very good. There was a demonstration between Morocco and Algeria where there was a border conflict, and a group of people marched out chanting, "God is great" in Arabic, Allahu Akbar. And the opposing side, which were all Muslims, refused to fire on them. Because, you know, religion spoke to them. In Bosnia, religion was a divisive issue. You know, so religion would have set people off, you see. So, you know, you try to work it out in such a way that you can be most effective, communicate most clearly, and also have a modicum of safety yourself. So like, for example, in Bosnia, one of the things I learned in Bosnia was that snipers, the movie Saving Private Ryan has a sniper scene in it. And this is the way I always visualize snipers. They're up in a bell tower and you look for the reflection of their scope. And that's where you know where the sniper is. Well, the reality is most modern rifles now with a scope have a effective range of a half mile, sometimes greater. So they're not in the bell tower. They're on the horizon.
Wow.
Where you can't see them at all. So anytime you can see beyond buildings, and there's not a building blocking you, a sniper can see you and can shoot you with pinpoint accuracy. So you want to have a banner that can be read from some distance, not just a leaflet. Snipers don't read leaflets, you know, in a sniper zone. And you want to, you know, you want to do prolonged things like candlelighting or something like that in an area where there are buildings shielding you from the horizon, so somebody doesn't die foolishly. You want to know where landmines are.
Right. Okay,
you know, you want your vehicles to have reflective writing on them saying peace in the language of all the parties. You want your leaflet to be addressed to all parties. You don't want to be saying disarm and give it to one side and enrage them because the other side isn't being told. You want it to have the same message being given to all parties. If you're delivering aid, you want to make sure that it's going to all parties. And, you know, so there's a lot of different things. In Afghanistan, I learned, for example, you can offer your hand to a man, but it's offensive to offer your hand to a woman. She has to offer her hand first, and then you can shake hands. I mean, there's different cultural things that you learn. And the other thing too is they realize that they're beginning with these issues. They're feeling out nonviolence. The Afghan Youth Peace Volunteers only are 2 years old, 3 years old really. And when they began, they were asked, "Is peace possible in this country?" And all of them said no. They were despairing of that prospect. And their hope for it has built somewhat, and their intuitions of what can be done. Some of that has come through these international conversations with people in Egypt, in Libya, in active campaigns, and people in the United States and others, and say, well, we did this in this situation, and maybe this will be a good thing to do. Maybe you can.
Now, these are all youth?
They are. They're as young as 14 and as old as 23.
And as old as 23. And you said that they're a nonprofit organization.
Well, they refuse any donations outside of Afghanistan. They'll only take donations in kind from other Afghans. And the reason for that is the country essentially is suffering from so much corruption. The government, which we are sponsoring, for instance, many people there referred to it as a mafia.
I've heard that.
Not just corrupt, a mafia. You know, a physically dangerous, corrupt institution. 2 of the members of Hamid Karzai's cabinet are warlords, one of whom was famous for cutting the breasts off women. Oh, wow. I mean, these are you know, people that would be in The Hague in a minute, and they're really high in the government, and they're notorious, very, very, very dangerous people, and very corrupt. the Kabul bank, which was connected to the President Karzai, just billions of dollars given out to cronies and stuff and everything. So there's a sense from these people, we want to make it very clear that this is not a group being set up so that we can go on junkets and get on a speaking tour and be put in nice hotels by foreigners. The Afghan Youth Peace Volunteers are really, I mean, they were scrupulous about, they wouldn't let us buy them lunch, and you know, which is amazing.
Yeah.
You know.
But maybe they feel that this is where they need to be.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I think they're wise, and they did it. One of the demonstrations, which is on the YouTube, this march they did in Kabul, which was extraordinary because you'll see in the YouTube that there were riot police in shields and helmets there.
Oh, right in front of them.
Right.
I was watching that, and I did favorite that on my YouTube channel.
Right.
So you could go www.youtube.com/ramonainterviews, and you can see it in the favorite, and it is beautiful. The women were wearing a blue scarf, I noticed, and the banner was blue. And I'm going to cry. It was just so nice. And they were all...
Oh, I can't watch it without crying because this demonstration, those police you see in the riot uniforms, they're not there to protect them.
Oh, I assume that was the case. They were not.
There are many other demonstrastrations, burning the American flag in effigy, burning a bomb in effigy only a week earlier in Kabul. And people were clubbed and arrested and beaten. And this was something that even the police had never seen. A demonstration like this.
Nonviolent?
It's so nonviolent, you know, that even talked about them, we want to be friends.
Yes,
even
at the
reaching
end
to
they
them,
to
the police.
Yes, I noticed that.
And these are police not like our police. They look more like soldier, you know, commandos.
They are.
And, you know, but the group, make no mistake about it, they're opposed to the Karzai government, they're opposed to the NATO forces, to the US forces, they're opposed to the Taliban. In a lot of countries in Syria and Egypt, these movements are facing repression from one possible source, you know, Gaddafi or Assad. In Afghanistan, this group is opposing 4 parties.
That's amazing.
Yes, they could be killed by any one of them.
Yeah.
And they could be unpopular with any one of them. They are really doing something unbelievably brave.
I am Ramona, and you've been watching Ramona Interviews. Keep the conversation going. Have a wonderful week.